Hello, William Wood here, and I'm broadcasting to you live from my office here in Ogden, Utah, and I'm really excited that you've come to join me for a few minutes today. I want to talk to you about the process of creating a life compass today. And a life compass is a way of developing a sense of direction for where you want to go in life. And this is an important topic for me because for me, goal setting and goal achieving has been absolutely dead center to my focus over the last year. And what I want to help you do is I want to help you today learn some of what it is you need to learn to be able to develop your own life compass so that you can, set your eye on a target and go ahead and get it. Over the last year, since January 3rd of this year, when I made it my focus to start going out and going after these goals, I have been able to set and achieve more than 20 goals. In fact, I haven't tallied them up. I probably should have done that for today, but it's been somewhere close to like right in the neighborhood of 30 to 35 goals that I've set and achieved from the beginning of the year. And one of the most important ones for me relates to my health. So at the beginning of the year, I weighed 227.2 pounds. And today I stand before you weighing 172 as of my early AM weigh-in. And that's incredible. I've literally lost more than 50 pounds since the beginning of the year. Now, part of those multiple goals that I've achieved have been little road marks along the way, or little important steps along the way to achieving. But not only have I been able to achieve health goals using these concepts of a life compass, but also I've been able to go out and create some products. And I don't know if you can see this here, but this is an example of one of the products that I was able to create. I've literally talked about creating product as a coach for years and years, and it's just been in the last few months that a lot of this has come together. This is one of 4 programs that's now out, and this one is one that I co-produced with Christian Westerfelt, the co-host of my 5 Freedom show, and we talk about the concept of forgiveness. I also have a program called Words and Think Thin, and there's a brand new one called Walk with Mosquitoes. And this morning I was actually in the studio recording before I came on to the Hangout today to do another one. And the list goes on. I've had relationship goals. I've had simple goals to do things like get my house painted. I've had goals around finances and increasing my own income. And I've watched my customer base and my subscriber base, and I've watched my shows just take off in terms of the results, and in terms of the subscribers and the people that are connecting with me. I started teaching live classes in my office here as a coach, and I'll have one tomorrow. And I think we have something like 20 people who've come in for these classes. So just everywhere in my life, whether it's been financial, whether it's been as a coach, whether it's been to produce product, or whether it's been to focus in on my health, lose weight, or even to connect in terms of relationships, I've just seen massive results. And I don't share this with you just to say that it's that I'm the only one that can do it. I want to say that I totally and thoroughly believe that you have the ability to do this too. And sometimes all it takes is a little nudge to get you moving and to get you going forward. So are you ready? I want to help you, and I want to share with you just some of the simple ideas that I've used that have really helped me out over the last year achieve everything that I need to achieve. So I got a couple of questions before the webinar started, and if you want to submit a question during today's broadcast, go ahead and you can go to my Facebook page. Most of you already probably connected with me on Facebook in some way, but if you're not, it's facebook.com/william.wood, the number 2, and you'll be right there. So I'm going to go check that page. I know I got a couple of questions earlier today, and I wanted to start off by answering those questions. So let me just go ahead and get there here real quick. And let's It's just pulling up. Facebook's being pokey. Here we go. Okay, so the questions that were asked today, first one was, when you feel lost and aren't even sure of who you are, how do you even figure out a goal? I'm not sure where to start. It's hard when you don't know what you want. And then it says, I am most content where I am in life and what I'm doing. I love working for you. Okay, this is from Vicky. Okay, so well, let's start off with this question around how do you pick a goal if you don't know what you want? And this is a really interesting concept, and I probably have a little bit of a controversial view. And that is that if you don't really know where it is that you're going in life, you pick a place. And you go, well, what kind of place should I pick? You pick any place. You go, what? What are you gonna just pick any place? Here's what I think. I think that all of us have inside of us, is we have deep down inside, we have a life compass. Our heart tells us where to go and where not to go, but the compass doesn't work really well until we get in motion. And so even if our first goal takes us completely in the wrong direction, it takes us like way off into left field somewhere, you won't know that you're off course until you start moving. And you've probably had this experience. You started some project, you're real enthusiastic about it, then you got like 20 or 30 days and you're like, this isn't quite right. My direction is wrong. That's because your heart will naturally help you navigate in the direction that you wanted to go. As I've been a coach, I've committed to a number of different projects. I've done a number of different speaking events, and there's times when I've done something and my heart afterwards says, you know, Will, that really doesn't have anything to do with your major purpose in life. And it's in those moments that I can course correct. Last night I was sitting down with a couple of colleagues, a couple of fellow coaches, and one of the coaches was saying, you know, I really am just feeling like doing one-on-one mentoring is not really my calling anymore. And that's what he was saying. Now I have a very different feeling about that. I feel like helping people one-on-one or helping people in groups is definitely part of what I do. But he says, this isn't really what I even want to be doing anymore. And then I asked him, I said, well, why are you doing it? He goes, well, it's, you know, paying the bills, and, you know, it's what, you know, generates my income. And I said, that's a bad plan. You know, your heart's telling you that you need to go in another direction, and you don't find that out until you take action. Had he not gone out and started doing one-on-one coaching, had he not gone out and started doing one-on-one mentoring, he would not have had his heart start to tell him, you need to do public speaking and motivational speaking, which is what his heart was telling him. So pick something, and you go, well, what should I pick? Anything. It could even be like a little goal, like to go out and to, you know, put together enough money to buy something or to go on a vacation or anything. The very act of setting a goal and putting yourself into motion will get you focused and locked in such a way that it ends up taking you in the direction that you need to go. So even if it's not like an ultimate direction, any direction is better than no direction. And if you start your life with no direction, just time to go pick something. And, you know, as long as it's honest, ethical, legal, and moral, why not? Why not just make it go for it? Literally, my first goal, I didn't really know where I wanted to go when I set up my coaching practice years and years ago. So when it was 2009 and I was just going into business as a brand new coach, and I'd seen some clients, but only like in practice sessions as a coach. I hadn't actually done like the live work, you know, the scary work of working with somebody who hadn't ever seen me before, and then scary. Now it's like, you know, it's old hat. I'm really confident and good at what I do. And so I love helping people. But I remember that, and I didn't know what my specialty was supposed to be. And so one of the gals that was coaching me at the time, she says, Will, why don't you help people with fears and habits? Now, it turns out that I liked that, but some people go into that same line of work and they don't like it. And they go, this is not what I want. And the heart acts as a compass and guides those people to what it is that they do want. So first step in setting and getting goals is to pick something. And if you don't know what, pick anything and then let yourself course correct every couple of weeks, or course correct after you go ahead and get that goal. So my business today as a coach is fairly different than it was when I first started. When I first started, my practice really revolved around just habits and fears. But today, I found a passion for helping people reach their goals, just like I've reached mine. And so I've been able to go out there and I've been able to help out a lot of people in that way. But none of that would have started if I hadn't just taken the plunge, taken the first step, and decided to get moving. So first step to creating your life compass is literally just to pick a goal, and then also to be aware enough of the feedback that life is giving you, that if your internal compass, is telling you that you're not quite pointed in the right direction, just to literally turn around, start moving, and start heading in a new direction. So that's step number one. Now, step number two is, if you actually do have a goal that matters a lot to you, then what you need help with is you need help staying on track. I mean, how many of you I'm raising my hand here. How many of you have had the experience where you've set a goal and then you go out to go get it, and this is something that you want, this is something that your heart's calling you to do, but you get like a week or two in and then you start feeling lazy, and it's not your heart calling you off course, it's like laziness dragging you down, or it's a little negative self-talk that's talking to you in the mind that says, you can't do this, you're not good enough. And I think that the number one killer of goals has nothing to do with the ability of the individual. It has everything to do with managing the mind and the heart. So let me show you something. And because I really think that this has to do with what I would call the 80% of goal achievement. See, 80% of goal achievement has nothing to do with what's going on in terms of the actual goal setting process. If you've actually picked something and you know what you want, now the hard part, or the part that's going to take all of your effort, really has to do with what comes up next. And I call this the thought, action, and emotion wheel. And another way of saying this is that 20% of your goal achievement is setting a goal and getting it set up into some sort of format that works for you. And I have some different ideas about what that looks like. Maybe I'll share some ideas here in a minute. But assuming that you've actually got your goal identified, let's say that you want to start a new seminar business, and in this seminar business, you want to go out and have 10 people at your seminar by the end of next month, so by the end of October, and that was your goal. Or let's say that you were in a sales company and you wanted to make 15 new sales by the end of the month, or you wanted to make 30 new sales by the end of the month. The first part to getting that goal is getting really clear on what it is that you want, making sure that you've dotted all the I's, you've crossed all the T's, and you know exactly what it is that you're going after. But the second part of it has to do with managing your mind and managing your heart as you go for the goal. So this thought, emotion, action wheel is something that will help keep you going in the right direction. And this is something that I really consider like the secret sauce. This is what's allowed me to go out and get those 20 plus goals since the beginning of the year. And that is, first, I set a goal. And second, I actively start working on my thoughts, emotions, and actions. So in this wheel, what you'll see is that thoughts lead to emotions, emotions lead to actions, and actions lead back to thoughts. So what derails people, what derails me at least, and what derails many of the people that I coach, is that once we get going towards a goal, that will come to that moment, and then the mind starts playing games with you. The head starts saying things like, you're never going to be able to do it. You can't make it. You're gonna fall off the wagon. You're gonna get stuck. People aren't gonna like it. It's scary. Don't go out there. And so all sorts of thoughts come up, and as those thoughts start to get really real, they work our way down into the heart, and then the heart goes and generates fear, doubt, shame, guilt. And then if we're not careful, then our actions start to change. We start to avoid important action steps that we need to take. Or we start to do actions that are more like avoiding actions. So I don't know if I'm the only one that's done this. So like, for example, years ago, when I set a goal, when I first went through one of my initial coaching training programs, I set a goal to produce this CD set. And I was like, I'm going to produce this CD set. It's going to be awesome. I'm going to go out, I'm going to reach a lot of people, and it's just going to be super cool. So I start thinking about going in and like recording. I'm like, I didn't know how to find a studio that could produce, or how to use my computer in such a way that I could, record good audio. I didn't know how to organize my notes so that like people would be entertained and would be able to follow my presentation from beginning to end. And there were so many questions on the how to that the little voices inside that says, you can't do this, you're not good enough, and you don't know how, you're going to look stupid, they just shut me down. And I stayed shut down around that goal for, 2009, 2010, 11, 12, 13, 14, 5 years. 5 years that the I don't know how to and the I'm scared to story shut me down. Now, is that a familiar story? I mean, the reason I share that, and I'm getting a little vulnerable here by doing that, is to say, hey, I know what it's like. I know what it's like to have a giant dream of something that you want to accomplish, whether it's with your health, your relationships, your business, your finances, anywhere, and not to be able to accomplish it. It's tough. I mean, I really wanted to do this. This was something that I wanted to do bad. And I even tried, and I had like false starts. I would start to record something that I'd be like, oh, that's dumb. Nobody will like it. And that thought would go down to my heart, and then I'd go and like delete the files and, wouldn't share them, wouldn't even let anybody hear them. Nobody would even know. I'd go out and I went out, and this is awesome. I went out, I spent $500 on I was going to show it to you, but this actually isn't the one. But I spent $500. This isn't the microphone, but I spent $500 on like this super professional, nice microphone, and I never used it. I don't even think I think I plugged it in to make sure that it worked after I bought it, but I never used it. Have you ever bought a gym membership and like found yourself not going to the gym? Or have you found yourself maybe buying a course to learn how to do something and then you never even end up going through it? Well, what makes us do that? One of the things that makes us do that is that we're not actively managing our mind and our heart. And if you don't have any tools or techniques to be able to manage what's going on in the head and the heart, the chances of you being able to get to your destination is very, very slim. So what I want to share with you here over the next few minutes are some of the tools, some of the techniques, and some of the approaches that have really helped me be able to take things out just to a huge level of success and to be able to skyrocket forward. And there's no way that I can share everything with you in a period of, what do we have left? Probably another 30 minutes or so, 30, 35 minutes. But I'm going to share everything I can because I want you to succeed, and I want you to have the success that you're looking for. This formula, as I've proved for myself, it works with health, it works with relationships, it works with finances, it works with business goals. And I've helped clients apply it in dozens and dozens of other areas. Just last night, working with a couple of my colleagues on setting new goals and applying this same formula so that they can reach their end destination. So whatever it is that you want, whatever it is that you're wanting to accomplish in your life, let's buckle down and let's get serious about managing the mind and the heart. Now, I want to show you one more thing on this wheel, and then let's get into the techniques. Let's get into the nitty-gritty. So thought management leads to emotion management. Thoughts lead to emotions lead to actions lead to thoughts. But you also notice that the arrows, kind of go in every which way, meaning that actions lead to new thoughts. Taking new action leads to new thoughts. Managing your emotions will change your actions, and it will change your thoughts. So you can enter into this thought, emotion, action wheel at any point, and it will start to change the results in your life. If you want new results in your life, you've got to take new actions. And if you can't bring yourself to take those new actions quite yet, I totally get that. You can start with your thoughts. There are 3 levels to creating results in your life. And this is going right into the thought, emotion, action wheel and into my approach and my techniques for achieving these goals this year. There's 3 levels to creating results in your life. Number 1 is you create with the mind. And think about this for just a minute. If you've ever seen like a skyscraper in a large city, or maybe there's a large building in the city where you live, you know that before they ever start the construction on that building, what they first do is they first thoroughly imagine the building, or they create the building on paper. And this is the process of, I think, to borrow a term from Disney, of Imagineering. It's the process of imagining what you want in vivid detail. Now, I want to point out that the engineers and the architects who imagine the skyscraper, they don't just leave it in their head, but they also put it on paper. And this is part of planning, imagining, and laying out. Let's say that what I wanted to do, well, I'll tell you a little bit about my product goal, just because this is one I'm actively working on. And if this isn't one you can relate to, I'll come around to a health goal here in a minute. But with my product goal, I set a goal. I went to a class, and the class was on presentations and speaking. I'm always refining my skills. In fact, next week I'm going to be back, refining my skills a little bit more on how to teach and present, so that next time I do a webinar for you, my skills are that much better than they are today, right? And so every time, just getting a little bit better. But and I think that's part of constant, never-ending improvement, and just this constant quest to always do more and be more for the people that we serve. And so I'm going to be studying so that I'm better for you. But if we take this goal, I went to a class, and there were a couple of challenges that came out of that class. One was for us to go out and to produce an audio CD program. And it's something, like I said, that I had this goal for a long time. So I took that goal to heart. And I literally walked out of that class, and the first thing I did is I decided what I wanted. And I said, I am going to have a CD program done within 5 calendar days, because I knew if I gave myself too much time, I was going to totally chicken out. And so I went for it. That meant I had to start recording now, right? So it was day 1, pick up the microphone, flip on the recorder, and go start speaking to the mic and speak life into that thing. I already had something kind of planned out that I wanted to do. And so I just started speaking it. And so that was day 1. Day 2, edit the audio. Day 3, get the art done. Day 4, get the whole project put together, send it over to the shop. And by day 5, it was in the inbox of the people who wanted to produce it. So I had to decide what I wanted. But before I went in and I started recording, before I hit the record switch, I literally had to imagine what it is that I wanted. And what I did is I took out a piece of paper, and this is my planning process usually for most things that I do, and I make a mind map. And this is my way of using the same process that the engineers and the blueprint drafters use to build a skyscraper. So as I'm creating with my mind, the first thing I do is I take out my pen, I take out my paper, and I start to make a mental map out on a piece of paper of what it is that I want. I have other clients that use a whiteboard. They'll go out to their office and they've got a war board, and I have one in the other room here. They have a war board, and on that war board, they'll fill up the whole war board with the mental creation of what it is that they want. And so whether you're filling up a war board, or whether you're taking out a piece of paper and making a mind map or a drawing of a doodle even of what it is that you're creating, this is an important part of the very first step, which is to create the result in the mind. So many times I'll have a client come in and they'll say, man, I want this result, but I don't know how to get it. And then they'll say something interesting. A lot of times they'll say, I can't even imagine myself actually accomplishing that goal. Or I can't see the results clearly in my mind, or it's kind of fuzzy. So the very first step is to get unfuzzy. It's to take the idea and to massage the idea and to break it apart and to plan it until it's clear. Until not only can you see it with the inner eye, but you can actually put it on paper and see it. Or maybe have a photograph drawn, or a picture drawn, or a photograph taken of what that result looks like. If your goal is to drive a BMW and you want a certain make and model, first is to decide that you want it. Second is I would actually go to the dealership. I would sit in that car and have somebody take a picture of me. And that way I can go home, put that picture up where I can see that clearly. That's part of step one. But the second part of step one is also making the map. Like, how am I going to get there? And you don't have to know the end, the whole end from the beginning, but you do at least need to know what the next few steps are. So once I got the image in my mind, I go, okay, this is the end result. This is like the architect. The architect goes, he draws the end state of what the whole tower is going to look like, right? The skyscraper has been built on paper, but he doesn't have conceptualized all the engineering that needs to happen, not yet. Now, he may have some idea about it because an architect is going to have some of that background and understanding. But in the concept phase, it's going to be a lot about how is this thing going to look? Now, after we figure out what it's going to look like or what we want it to look like, then we got to look at the engineering details and make sure that the engineering can actually support the building. Then the blueprint guy has got to go in and draw down to the little details of how that's going to happen so that the carpenter can go in and build it. And so, again, if I want this BMW, if this is my goal, I want to drive this brand new BMW. Maybe I said a Mercedes earlier, but same difference. I want to drive a BMW, and I want the, I don't even know, the E-Series. I don't even know what they are, right? I'm not a car guy, right? But if I wanted to do that, I would go out and I would go to the BMW dealership. I'd sit in the car and have somebody take a picture of it so that I could visualize the end result, just like the architect is visualizing the end result of the building. Then I'd pass it over to the engineering team, and the engineering team needs to figure out, okay, like how much money do I need to be able to come up with to get this done? And maybe it's $50,000. So then I go out and I go, okay, I got to come up with $50,000. Well, am I going to come up with that all at once? Am I going to do a financing plan? Am I going to do a lease option? Like what are my options? And I may just spend some time exploring the options and laying out the different plans. Then once I got that mapped out, then I would start to ask myself, how? And this is the engineering question. How do I build a building that supports this image that I've got drawn? And then I'm going to go in and I'm going to do a brainstorming session. Here's the number one technique that I use in this period of thought creation. Once I know what I want, even if I don't know how I'm going to get it, I will start to ask myself, what are 100 ways that I can get this done? And well, that's a lot of ways. And I go, I know. It will force creativity. And it also will force you to go out and look for options. So like when I went in and I was like, I'm going to go make this recording, I didn't know how to do it. For example, I didn't even know like what kind of companies I should be contacting about, like, who does shrink wrapping? Who can do artwork for something like this? Who can, print the CD labels? And is that something that I do out of my office, or is that something that like I go hire somebody for? Like, I had no idea. I had 5 days to solve this problem, right? Because I set this goal. I'm going to get this done in 5 days. I didn't even know how to do it. And so I went out and I literally just started brainstorming. I'm like, well, how could I do this? Well, I guess I could like get software and I could like print it out. I could print it out on my computer, but that'd probably look kind of chintzy. So I don't want to do that. So maybe there's a company that specializes in this. And so I said, who's already got a CD done? And so I went out and I went on my Facebook and I said, who's already done this? And then I had a couple people that answered back and I contacted them. I said, well, I sent out some text messages and I was like, who do you use for this stuff? And I got the same company name back 3 times in a row. And I was like, okay, there we go. That's the company I'm using. So then I called them up and I got them on the phone. I said, what are my options? What are the different types of programs that I can create? And I started to brainstorm and I started to make a list of all the different ways that I could get that done. And I didn't even have to come up with 100. I came up with like 20 different options for, printing and getting the replication and or duplication done, depending on how you want to do it. But I found out my options, found out what the pricing was going to be, and then boom, within making a list of 20 things, I had my blueprint. I knew exactly what I needed to do, and then it was just a matter of taking the next action step. So here we are still in this first phase, and this first phase is just using the imagination. Using the imagination does mean visualizing, but I think it also means using the executive planning capabilities that our minds have. One of the reasons that so many plans fail is that people will put an image up on their vision board, or they'll put an image in on their phone of something they want, but they never really count the cost. Imagine what would happen if you were building a skyscraper and no one ever built a blueprint, and then they just sent a carpenter out there to go build. I don't know what that carpenter would build, but I can promise you it wouldn't look anything like a skyscraper. Or if it did, it might topple over and become a hazard. Why? Because you need to have a plan. And level one creation of any goal has to do with building the blueprint. And that means visualizing the end state, that's the architecture, and then moving into drafting mode, which is kind of building out the how. And if you don't have the whole how, you just ask yourself, what's the next how? So for example, let's take the BMW example. If I wanted, and then I'll give you a weight loss example with this, and then we'll move on to the second phase. But if with the BMW, if I want to get a BMW and I need to come up with $50,000, and I go, okay, well, I got to come up with 50 grand. Am I going to do that on a financing, or am I going to do that on a cash? Well, let's say that I wanted to do it like on a lease option, because I was going to be mainly driving it around town. It was going to be mainly a business thing. If I went out of town and I'd rent a car or whatever. And so I wanted to do a lease option. And I found out that for a lease option, what they were going to need is they were going to need $5,000 down. Now, I don't know if these are real numbers. I'm not a car guy, but let's say I'd done the research and I found that out by, calling up the dealership and just finding out. I'd already had my picture done. I've got it up on my vision board. I'm looking at it. I'm visualizing the end state. I'm feeling good about it. But, the next step now is to start planning it out. How am I going to do it? How am I going to do it? And then taking those next steps forward, which we'll talk about here in a minute. And I find out I got to come up with $5,000. So then the next phase of my level one creation, which is still this mind creation, is to take out a pen, to take out a piece of paper, and to come up with 100 ways that I can come up with $5,000, because that $5,000 down payment is the next smallest step that I need to focus in on. And I might only have 20 ideas that are in my brain. Now, here's an interesting thing about writing down 100 things. Usually what will happen is you'll write down about 20 different options right away, and you'll be able to come up with like 10 or 20 ideas like fast. These are the ideas that you've already thought of. These are the ideas that are like on the top of your mind. These are the ideas that are almost obvious. And you may have even explored some of these options and found that you couldn't do it. So then you write out, then you kind of come to this wall, and the wall is like, I've run out of ideas. Well, that's where the creativity starts. Now, what'll happen next is you'll get all sorts of ideas that may not be fully honest, fully ethical, or fully moral. Now, this I want you to listen to everything I'm going to say. I actually want you to write those things down, but I don't want you to do them. And here's why. Your brain will put up a wall on the inspiration that you need to get to if you don't just get that stuff out of the way. So please stay legal, stay honest, stay ethical, stay moral, but write it down. Write down the twisted ideas you have. You rob a bank. Don't rob a bank. That's a bad idea. You'll go to jail, and it'll be bad. But if that thought crosses your mind, write it down and burn the paper afterwards so no one can find it, right? But at least get it down on paper so that it's out of the way. What'll usually happen is by the time then that you've got 20 normal ideas, and then you've got like your 20 dark ideas about getting your goal, now you've got like another 50 ideas to come up with. And you're like, well, where are those ideas going to come up from? Well, that's when you reach out to friends and family and you're like, hey, I'm looking for brainstorm ideas. I need to figure out how to do this. And so now people start sharing new ideas with you. ideas that you've never considered. Maybe they've got something on their list, maybe on the good list or the bad list, but they're putting other ideas on your list. And then you're also just opening yourself wide open to the inspiration that comes. And you're just thinking about it. Maybe you're praying about it, or maybe you're just meditating over it, or maybe you're getting quiet and still. And so for a couple of days, you put this list together of 100 ways to get that $5,000. And finally, towards the end of that list, usually in the last 10 to 20 ideas, an idea comes. It's something you've never considered. It was outside of the normal box of, your good list and your bad list, but it's out of the box, and it's legal, honest, moral, and ethical. And you go, this is what I'm going to do. And I've seen this with clients over and over and over again. It wasn't until they got the old, worn out ideas out of the way. It wasn't until they got the dark ideas out of the way. It wasn't until they got done asking their friends and family and coworkers and acquaintances and everybody else, and then finally open themselves up to the inspiration. Maybe it comes from the unconscious mind. Maybe sometimes it comes from beyond. But in those moments, we download these powerful ideas that come into our heart that allows us then to take that next step forward. And so that's level one creation. That's the first part to this whole process of using your mind to create. Now, there's lots of other practices that we could talk about. We could talk about visualization practices. We could talk about blueprint planning processes. But I think with the techniques that I've just shared with you, you'd have a huge jumpstart. Let me share with you a weight loss goal. Let me run it through the same thing, because I don't care if you're trying to improve your health, your relationships, or your finances. This methodology works. First, decide what you want. If you don't know ultimately what you want, or you're waiting for like some revelation, just pick something. I'm going to get a brand new camcorder. I'm going to buy a new car. I'm going to go out and get my house painted. Pick something that's in your world. I'm going to build a better relationship with my kid. I'm going to go out and take the relationship I have with my spouse to the next level. But in my case, at the beginning of the year, I found myself weighing more than I had ever weighed in my entire life. And a bunch of reasons for it. But, one reason for it is that, I'd been kind of stressed out for the previous couple of years, and I had put on some weight. I weighed 227.2 pounds. My frame should not weigh 227.2 pounds. For those of you that are on my Facebook profile, you can scroll down to like January. You can see, and I had a lot more weight in the cheeks. And if you saw my belly, I had a lot more weight in my belly. My boy actually came up to me on January. This is like January 2nd or 3rd. I forget the exact day. He came up to me. This is my 11-year-old now. He was 10 then at the time. But he came up to me, poked me in the belly, and he was like, I didn't know dads could get pregnant. Ha, 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 ha. And he runs off. And I'm like, oh, man. It kind of hurt my feelings a little bit. And I don't say that to put him down. I mean, he was right. My belly looked pregnant, and I wasn't feeling so hot about it. My waistline was like out to a 42.5-inch waistline, and I was uncomfortable. I wasn't fitting in my clothes, and I didn't feel good. Well, I knew this formula. It's the formula I've been teaching my clients about creating a life compass, by letting their heart guide them in the direction they want to go. And my heart was telling me, Will, it is time to lose the weight. You got to do something. And I looked in the mirror and I was like, it's now or never. I know I got to change. And so I went about the process of putting the change in motion. And so I started to look at what I could do. Well, I knew for me that what I wanted is I wanted to look really healthy, and I wanted to look really good. And that meant having chiseled washboard abs. And I'm not quite there yet. It's been 8 months. I'm still working on it. I'm way down. I'm 50 pounds down, 50 some odd pounds down, 50 and change, 53 or something like that. But, I'm not quite there. So I knew what the end state was, and that is I wanted to get washboard abs. So first thing I did is I went on, actually had my wife find me a picture of a guy with these chiseled washboard abs. So this is the architect phase. And so I've got the architect phase done, and I now have this image on a vision board. And a vision board is just a board where I put images of what I want. And I usually don't like, and ages ago, I used to have 9 things on there. But now I just have 3, I might have four images now, but 3 or 4 images max, just a few things that I'm focused in on to help me visualize. So I put this image of the washboard abs. This is the architect phase. And I looked at that and I was like, I want washboard abs. Now I know people that will just stay at that level. They'll just stay at the architect level and they'll never get it into construction. And so they'll just kind of visualize having washboard abs and kind of hope and wish that they get it, but nothing will ever happen because they never move it into the planning phase. So I said, I know I got to plan this out. So I sent it to the engineering team. I sent it to the drafting team. And I said, what is the next step forward that I got to take? And I said, the next step forward is I just got to track every single calorie that's going into my mouth. So I asked around, I found out what an app was that I could use. I decided I was going to use MyFitnessPal, and I decided that for 10 days, I was going to track every bite of food that goes in my mouth. Maybe it was 7 days. It was 7 or 10 days. I was going to track every bite of food that went in my mouth. It wasn't even to lose a pound. It was just to figure out what was going on, right? What was going on? I was already exercising. I was already doing yoga and walking a ton. I was walking an average of 5 to 10 miles a day. And I was going to yoga. And so I was like doing all the exercise components, but I just didn't have my eating under control. So it was track. This is part of the blueprint phase. I didn't even know what to change until I mapped it out. So the first 10 days was all about tracking and mapping and figuring out what was going on, making that blueprint. And you know what I found? I found there were some things to change. I also managed to lose like 4 pounds that first week just by tracking without even trying to lose weight. Once I lost 4 pounds, my next goal was to lose 1 pound. I didn't have to make a list all the way to 100, but I made a list of like 20 different ideas that I could do based on the data that I now had from my planning to make those changes. So that was the blueprint phase with my weight loss. Then I lost 1 pound, then I lost 2 pounds, then I lost, pretty much every goal I set at that point was 2 pounds. And I lost it 2 pounds, 2 pounds, 2 pounds, 2 pounds, 2 pounds, until I had 50 pounds lost. There's actually more than 20 goals that I've achieved just on the weight loss side. That's the way I know that I'm way over 20. I might even be over 40 since the beginning of the year. It's a ton, all puns intended, a ton of weight, right? And it's a ton of movement. So the second key beyond creating with the mind, I'm not going to go to the second level of creation, but the second key that I have is to break your goals down into bite sizes. So you see with my weight loss goal, for example, I broke the goal down into just a teeny tiny increment, and then I put all of my energy and attention just on that one goal. And that makes it really easy to do. So level 1 creation, create with the mind. In level 1 creation, we first create the end or the outcome. We send it into architect phase, and then we put it into the engineering, the blueprint phase. And then step 2 is to create with your mouth. And what do you mean create with your mouth? Well, one of the things that will kill more people in getting their goals is the negative self-talk that goes on inside of them. And not only will the self-talk get inside the head and start messing around with the energy that you got going on here, but those thoughts will oftentimes come out of the mouth and they'll start to hit other people too. And then those people go like, ew, I don't want what he's got. And then they'll kind of go, they'll go away. You ever been around someone who's real negative? Well, the way you practice at getting your words exactly where you want them is by speaking what you want over and over and over again when you're in private, so that when you're in public, it's easy to speak what you want. Have you ever noticed, and maybe you haven't, so I do a lot of coaching. I've coached thousands of individuals all over the planet. I do one-on-one sessions. And I'd love to help you, by the way, with your goals. If you want help, reach out and contact me. Today is about you. There's no catch. There's no hitch. But if you need help achieving whatever goal you've got, I've got all sorts of programs, from group programs to one-on-one programs, to help you get your goals. But I've sat down with all these people and I've helped them get their goals. And here's what I know happens. Their language does not match their plan. Their plan is to get them their BMW, but then they'll catch themselves saying like, oh, I don't deserve that, or I could never have that. And there are some people who are so steeped in an old way of thinking that when they go to say, I want that new BMW, or I want a raise, or I deserve to have more money in my life, or I deserve to have a happy relationship. They can't even bring themselves to say those words in private. If you can't bring yourself to say the words in private, you will never generate the energy that you need to be able to go out and to achieve the results. So before you have the public victory, you've got to have the private victory. And the private victory means being able to speak what you want. I think it's interesting that one of the oldest creation stories that we have on the planet, it's the Judeo-Christian creation story. Now, I'm Christian. You don't have to be Christian to appreciate the story. If you read the first chapter of Genesis, it's interesting. Go read it. It says that in the beginning, God spoke, "Let there be light." And after he spoke, light burst forth into creation. Wow. Now, I don't know if that's literally the way it happened or if that's just a story to kind of give us a metaphor for how it happened. But that's the way that I look at creating new results in my life, is I've got to learn to speak the words of creation. If I want a BMW, I've got to be able to say, I deserve a BMW. I've got to be able to look the right people in the eye, the banker, the car salesman, and anybody else, and say, I'm owning that car. I am driving that car. I've got to be able to speak it, and I will speak it before I drive it. When I was looking at my weight loss goal, and it was tracking the weight, and my first goal was just to track it. I spoke every morning. Today, I am tracking every calorie that goes in my mouth. And I spoke it. And I spoke it before it was true. You go, that's a lie, Will. No, it's not. I've got to practice speaking it in private so that I can live it in public. And I think it's a critical part for most people in the process of creation. And one of my secrets in getting 20 plus goals, I'm gonna count them up over the next few days. I'll count up all the goals that I've done. I've got a book where I keep a binder where I keep all these things. And I'll count them up and I'll get you back. I'll send out an email and report. But in all these goals that I put together, and a critical part of it is being able to speak the words. And I believe in speaking it in the present tense, and I believe in speaking it with some force. So every morning, so this morning, I was working on my financial goal, and I was looking at my financial goal that I have taped up to the wall, right at eye level, so I can't miss it as I'm leaving the room. And I looked at that, and I stood in what I call the Superman posture, fists on the hips, shoulders squared, chin up. And I looked at it and I said, I now earn, and then I, stated my income goal. I now earn blah, blah, blah. And that money comes to me easily. And then I just held my Superman pose. And I'm telling my body and I'm telling my mind, I am capable of doing this. With the weight loss, I weighed 227.2. Well, let's see, I lost 4 pounds right away. So it was like 220, what does that come out to? 220, let's say it's 222, just to make it easy math, because I'm bad at math. Okay, you'll see that, right? You'll see that. This is the reason I'm not a literal engineer, right? So let's say I weighed 222 pounds, which was one of my benchmarks. I remember being there. It was like 222.5 or something like that, right? I'd go back and look at the exact notes. But I'm at 222.5 and I want to weigh 220.5. I want to go down exactly 2 points. I would look at my image, I'd visualize it, and then I would speak it. I now weigh 220.5 pounds. Right? And I'd hold the posture. Right now, this morning I weighed in at 172, and my next goal is 170. And so I looked at those washboard abs this morning, hands on my hips, chest out, chin up. And I said, I now weigh 170 pounds. And I held the pose. And I was creating my world. I was creating my existence. I was literally doing the same thing that's in that first book, the book of Genesis, that oldest creation story, one of the oldest creation stories we have. I was speaking light into existence. Isn't that cool? Right? So you create with your mind, and there's the different phases. There's the architect phase, there's the engineering and blueprinting phase, and then there is the word phase. Now, I know people that going back to the thought, emotion, action wheel, that will just kind of get stuck here, and they'll just think about it, and they'll just speak about it. And speaking, one of the main reasons why I think speaking works is because speaking changes the emotion. Try it out. It is hard to speak a desirable result. Me and my boy now have an awesome relationship, right? If you're struggling with a relationship and you say that, it's hard not to feel better, especially if you say it with some conviction and power and a powerful body, powerful body posture. But then they'll get stuck and never take any actions. And let's get real. Unless you take some new actions, it's unlikely that you're gonna get any kind of new results. So the last step I'm gonna give you one more secret here in about 5 minutes. But the last major step of this 3-tiered creation formula is to go out and take inspired action. And what do I mean by inspired action? Well, when you're in the blueprinting phase and you're writing down all those ideas, you're gonna come across literally just amazing inspiration as you write out those 100 ways to achieve your goal. Or you're going to talk to someone who gives you just a brilliant piece of insight or information. Or maybe you'll buy a course, or maybe you'll do some coaching, and you'll just get an amazing idea, and you're like, I need to act on that. When you get that inspired action, you take the steps. You take the steps and you move forward. And the third level of creation is taking action. So let me give you my formula now for how I sort through all the different actions that I could be taking during the day, and how I decide exactly what it is that I'm going to do. What I do is I make that list, and then what I look at is I look at today. I look at the reality of my circumstances. If I needed to make $5,000 for a down payment on a BMW, I would say, well, I'd break that down, kind of like I did with the weight loss goal. I would break that down and say, well, man, $5,000 seems like a lot of money, but you know what? $500 isn't that much, or $200 isn't that much. And I'm going to say, I'm going to go out and I'm going to get $200. And then I would make a list of 100 different ways to get just $200, so I could put it towards that BMW down payment. Right. And so I make a list of 100 different things. I get all my kind of normal ideas out. Then I get all my dark ideas out. Then I ask family and friends, and then I just open up to inspiration. It's like, finally I get this list of ideas. And then finally I got something probably for $200, long before I get there. I mean, you can donate blood, and eventually come up with $5,000. I'm just saying, right? Not that I recommend getting a BMW by donating blood, but I mean, you could probably do it, right? So there you are. And it's like, I got my ideas, and it's like, I know exactly how I'm going to do this. And it is then what I do is I wake up in the morning. First thing, I did it this morning at 6 a.m. I looked at my goal, and I asked myself this question. Based on my goal, one of my goals is to reach 1,000 people with a positive message every month. To do that for free or under $10. Why? Because I want this information out there. And it's the reason why I'm doing this show right now, or this little training class. And I'm sharing with you some stuff that I charge people a lot of money for. I mean, I have had people pay me $200 to $300 just to learn this information that I'm sharing with you right now for free. I mean, isn't that cool, right? You're getting some awesome ideas, and hopefully there's at least one idea out of this that makes a big impact on your life. But I sit down and I looked at, one of my goals is to reach 1,000 people with a positive message. And I woke up this morning and I said, what is the number one most important thing that will get me to that goal that I can take today, and a little action step that I can accomplish before the sun goes down? There were 3 things. One was, you could post something to Facebook to invite a couple more people. So one of the things I did, first thing, was make a Facebook post. The second thing that came up was, you can send out an email reminding the people who've already RSVP'd. So that was the second thing that I did. And the third thing that I did was to actually show up here and do the presentation, make sure that I was on time. I had a little panic moment when I thought I couldn't figure out how to get the live YouTube event started. And that's just because I'm definitely not a tech guy, right? And you don't have to be a tech guy to get your goals either, but you might have to do some techie things like I did. So those were the 3 most important things I did today. So my action steps were to do those 3 things by the end of the day. And that's on one of my 2 most important goals right now for business, which is to reach 1,000 people this month. And the other one is a dollar amount. And I'm going to keep that one private. That's something that I'm working on. But it's a big one, right? I'm working on big stuff. But that's the process. So first is I already have the blueprint built. I've already got the affirmations built. I've got the words that I'm using to create my world. And I'm reaching 1,000 people with a positive message this month, right? And today I'm going to go out and share a class on goal setting so that I can lift and inspire others to greatness and help them to achieve the outcome that they're looking to achieve in their life. And then I looked at what's the very next step. And this question is the thing that separates people. It separates the wheat from the chaff, so to speak. That a lot of people will visualize it, a lot of people will affirm it, but they'll never take action. So today the question is before the sun sets, what is the one action step that you could take, that you could actually complete by the end of the day? Meaning you got to have enough time to do it. That if you did it, it would move you towards your goal. What is that? What is that? I mean, if you got a pen out, we're towards the end of the webinar. We're going to wind up here in just like under 5 minutes. Write it down. What's the one step you can take right now that would move you that much closer? Now, I've coached a lot of people, so I know what happens. If this is the goal, and this is, right, now let's see if you can see this, okay? So I'm lined up like that. If this is the goal, and this is where you are today, you've got to take a step towards your goal. And you're probably not going to get all the way to where you want to go today. So what you've got to do is you've got to do 2 things. You've got to make sure that your goal is actually in alignment. Okay, look at it this way. Your goal has got to be lined up dead center on where you want to go. If your goal is if your action step is out of alignment with your goal, you can make all these steps forward and you'll never hit where you want to go. So what I'll see people do is that instead of lining themselves up like this, what they'll end up doing is they'll set an action step that kind of takes them off to the side. If my goal is to reach 1,000 people in a month, it's like writing a book. It may not be lined up with that goal. Maybe later on, but it's like that's a different goal. And so it's not even like necessarily in alignment. Now it could be. Now if my goal is to publish a book and use the book publishing to get in front of a big media audience or something like that, that could absolutely be a huge part of going out there and getting things done. But if not, it's like maybe that's not lined up. Or like one time I was coaching a guy, this is a true story. His goal was to improve his relationship with his wife. His action step that he chose one day was to clean his closet out. Now, his wife wasn't complaining about the closet. It's like, what does cleaning out your closet have to do with lining up with your wife, improving that relationship? And he's like, well, it needs to be done. And I'm like, but is it lined up or not? So you want to get inspired action. The way you get inspired action is to figure out what you want, start speaking it, and then open yourself up to all these levels of inspiration. And then along the way, you'll get action steps. You'll get action steps that come to mind. There's a 9-minute podcast that I put out a while ago that talks a little bit more about this. And I'll find it and I'll post it on my Facebook page today or tomorrow. I'll put it up tonight before I go home from work. It's a 9-minute podcast on how to get results. And I talk about how you start with the end in mind, and then you work your way back and you ask, what's the most important thing that I do today? And then you identify an action step that you can actually complete before the sun goes down. And then you put all your energy and attention to that. And that's the only thing I focus in on. I focus in on 1, 2, or 3 steps max in a day. And all I'm looking to do is I'm looking to get from here to here by the end of the day. And then from the next day, I wake up and I go, what's the most important thing to do? And I try to get from here to here. And then the next day, from here to here. And successively, as I get those little goals, identified and pointed out, big things happen. And really, if you take this formula just flat out works. Okay, one more thing. This is just my last tip, and then we're at the hour mark, and we're going to wind up, and we're going to be done for today. And that is that if you struggle to stay true to your goals, you may need one thing that I haven't talked about today. And that is you may need somebody who can help you manage your mind and your heart. And I see this with myself. How easy is it to promise yourself something and not follow through? I mean, let's be honest. I have done that thousands of times. I'm going to do this, and then I never follow through. So what's different on the times when I do follow through versus the times when I don't? And one of the differences on the times when I do is that I go out and I look for help. And I want to let you know that if you've got big goals and you need someone to help hold you accountable, but not only hold you accountable, but to really give you tools for managing your mind and managing your heart, I'm here to do that. And I love to help you out with that. And if you want to reach out, you can reach out to the office at 801-203-3405, and you can just request that we give you information on how it is that you can get some coaching and get some help, because going out and finding the right person to help you on that journey can make all the difference in the world. And I'd love to be the one to help you out. I've also got a CD, and I should have brought it out. It is not the one I've been showing you. It's the CD called Words. And in it, I talk about how to use your mouth to create. And if anyone wants the MP3 version, this is not the hard copy, but if you want the MP3 version, I sell this for like $25. So I'm giving it as a gift to anybody who contacts the office. Okay. So if you contact the office, call up Vicki, or you can send her an email at utah.hypnosis. That's HYPNOSIS @gmail.com. We will send you an MP3 download for your personal use on words. It's this $25 training. It's an hour long of training on how to use your words to create the results that you want. And with that, I'm William Wood. You can contact us at 801-203-3405 or utah.hypnosis@gmail.com. I'd love to help you out. I'd love to help you take your life up to the next level and really just line up and blast off and get major results. So until soon, we'll talk again later, and we'll talk soon.